Lieutenant Commander Jake Viper Dalton had seen plenty of Pentagon observers come through the squadron, clipboard carriers who'd never pulled 9 gigaseconds or felt the gut punch of a catapult launch. So when Captain Sarah Moore walked into the briefing room that morning, he didn't even bother hiding his smirk. Another desk writer here to critique people who actually knew how to fight. What he didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the woman with the wire-rimmed glasses had more combat kills than their entire air wing combined. And in exactly 12 minutes, when 5 enemy fighters appeared on radar, she would climb into a cockpit and remind everyone that the most dangerous pilots are always the ones you never see coming. The USS Theodore Roosevelt sliced through the South China Sea under a sky that promised clear flying weather. In the squadron-ready room, Captain Sarah Moore sat in the back corner with her ever-present notepad, watching 16 fighter pilots receive their morning brief from Commander Shotgun Martinez, the squadron's operations officer. Training evolution is standard intercept procedure, Shotgun was saying, gesturing at the tactical display. 4-ship flight, Angels 20, will have red air coming at you from the northwest. This is about proper formation discipline and communication. Questions. Lieutenant Commander Jake Dalton, call sign Viper, raised his hand. Sir, is our observer going to critique us in real time, or does she wait until after we land to tell us everything we did wrong? Scattered chuckles rippled through the room. Sarah's pen never stopped moving. She'd been on the carrier for 3 weeks, and the routine was always the same. Subtle mockery disguised as questions, assumptions that she'd never been in a fighter cockpit, the underlying belief that headquarters sent analysts to justify budget cuts and nothing more. Captain Moore is here to evaluate training effectiveness, Shotgun replied neutrally. Show her why Navy fighter pilots are the best in the world, and she'll have nothing but good things to report. Sarah glanced up just long enough to meet Viper's eyes. He held her gaze for a moment, then looked away, a small victory in the daily game of establishing pecking order. What he couldn't see was that Sarah was tracking every detail of the brief. Wind speeds, cloud cover, the carrier's position relative to international boundaries, the distance to the nearest hostile forces. Her analyst cover story was perfect because she actually could do the analysis. She just happened to also be capable of much more. Lieutenant Cassidy, Torch, Ryan leaned toward her wingman, Lieutenant Marcus, Jester, Kim. $20 says she gets sick watching the helmet cam footage. These headquarters types always do. No bet, Jester whispered back. But I give her 3 days before she requests transfer to a desk in San Diego. Carrier life isn't for everyone. Sarah heard every word. Her expression never changed. The brief concluded and the pilots filed out toward their aircraft. Sarah remained seated, finishing her notes. Commander Martinez lingered, waiting until they were alone. You don't have to keep taking their crap, he said quietly. I can have a word with Viper. Make it clear that, no need, Commander. Sarah closed her notepad. They're acting exactly as expected. Young, confident, never been in real combat. This is normal. You're more patient than I'd be. Patience is easy when you know something they don't. She stood, tucking the notepad under her arm. Your brief was solid, by the way. Good fundamentals, though you might want to emphasize vertical separation protocols. In a real engagement, bunched formations get people killed. Martinez studied her with new interest. That's pretty. Specific tactical knowledge for a performance analyst. I read the manuals very carefully. Sarah headed toward the door. I'll observe from Air Ops. Try to keep your pilots from doing anything that'll make my report too critical. She left before he could ask more questions. The cover story worked because she gave people just enough expertise to be credible as an analyst, but not so much that they'd wonder where she'd really learned it. It was a careful balance she'd maintained for 8 months, ever since the medical board had grounded her and the Navy had decided her expertise was too valuable to waste but too classified to acknowledge. What nobody knew, what only a handful of people with the highest clearances understood, was that Captain Sarah Moore had spent 4 years flying missions in aircraft that officially didn't exist over airspace where American pilots officially never operated. She'd logged 2,400 combat hours. She had 14 confirmed air-to-air kills. She turned down command positions twice because command meant less flying. And then one night, her stealth fighter had taken a missile hit over contested airspace. She'd ejected, spent 12 hours evading enemy patrols before extraction, and woken up in a military hospital being told her flying days were over. Inner ear damage, the doctor said. Too much risk of spatial disorientation. 8 months of watching other people fly while she carried a clipboard and pretended to be something she wasn't. But today, something felt different. Sarah couldn't explain it, just a crawling sensation between her shoulder blades, the kind of feeling that had kept her alive in situations where instinct mattered more than instruments. She made her way to air operations, found her usual observation spot, and watched the 4F A-18 Super Hornets taxi toward the catapults. Viper and Torch were flight leads, with Jester and Lieutenant Snake Patterson on their wings. The first aircraft lined up on the catapult. Sarah watched the familiar choreography: tension, full power, final checks, launch officer signal. Then the catapult fired and Viper's Super Hornet rocketed down the deck and into the sky. 3 more launches followed in quick succession. Within 5 minutes, all 4 aircraft were airborne and formed up, heading northwest toward the training area. Flight of 4 departed, the Air Boss announced. Red Air launching from Guam in 15 minutes. Sarah poured coffee that tasted like burnt rubber and settled in to watch radar screens. This was her job now: observe, analyze, write reports that no one would read. It was professional purgatory for someone who'd once been among the elite. Then the speaker crackled with a transmission from Combat Information Center that made Sarah's blood go cold. Air Ops, CIC. We have multiple unidentified radar contacts, bearing 285, range 175 miles, speed 500 knots. Count as 5 aircraft in tactical formation. Transponders off. Sarah was on her feet instantly, moving toward the radar display before the Air Boss could even respond. She'd heard those exact words before, in situations that had ended with people dying. CIC, Air Ops. Confirm those aren't our Red Air aggressors. Negative, Air Ops. Red Air is still on the ground at Guam. These contacts originated from the northwest. Profile matches hostile fighters. The Air Boss keyed his mic, voice tight with controlled urgency. Hawkeye, home plate. Confirm radar picture, bearing 285. The E-2 Hawkeye early warning aircraft responded immediately. Home plate, Hawkeye. 5 bandits confirmed. Profile matches J-20 stealth fighters. They've crossed into international waters and are on intercept course for your training package. J-20s, China's most advanced stealth fighters. 5 of them, hunting 4 American pilots who thought they were on a training exercise. Sarah's mind shifted instantly from analyst mode to combat mode, a mental transition as automatic as breathing. She studied the radar display, calculating intercept angles, fuel states, weapons ranges. The geometry was bad. The training package was 60 miles northwest, flying straight and level, completely unaware. The hostile fighters were positioning for a classic ambush, using their stealth characteristics to close undetected. Recall the training package, Commander Martinez ordered. Get them turned around now. Belay that order, Sarah said, her voice carrying an authority that made everyone in Air Ops turn to stare. Sir, if you recall them, those hostiles will know we've detected their approach. They'll adjust tactics. Right now, we have a brief window where they think they have surprise. Captain Moore, with all due respect, this is a tactical situation, which is exactly why you need to listen to me. Sarah moved to the tactical display, her finger tracing the enemy formation. Those J-20s are setting up a pincer movement. If our pilots break now, the hostiles will adapt and still have the advantage. We need to warn our aircraft, get them into defensive posture, and get more fighters airborne immediately. The Air Boss studied her with sudden intensity. You're talking like someone with combat experience. That's because I have combat experience. More than anyone else in this room. Sarah met his gaze directly. Sir, I can talk you through the tactical response, or I can get in a cockpit and handle it myself. But we're wasting time having this conversation while American pilots are about to die. For 3 seconds, no one spoke. Then the Air Boss made a decision that would change everything. Captain, you're not flight certified for carrier operations. I have over 300 carrier landings. I'm more certified than half the pilots on this ship. Sarah pulled off her wire-rimmed glasses and set them on the console. Without them, her eyes were different. Harder, colder, the eyes of someone who'd killed enemy pilots and slept fine afterward. There's a ready bird on Cat 2. I can be airborne in 4 minutes. I can reach our training package before those hostiles get weapons lock. But I need authorization now. Commander Martinez stepped forward. Captain, if you're wrong about this, if I'm wrong, you can court-martial me. If I'm right and we do nothing, you'll be writing letters to 4 families explaining why their pilots died while we stood here debating regulations. She moved toward the door. I'm getting in that aircraft. You can either authorize the launch or explain to an admiral why you stopped me." She was out the door before anyone could respond, sprinting through the carrier's corridors toward the ready room where her real flight gear, the gear she hadn't worn in 8 months, was locked in a personal locker. Behind her, she heard the air boss on the radio. "Cat 2, Air Ops. Prep the ready bird for immediate launch. Pilot inbound." Sarah hit the ready room at full speed, yanked open her locker, and started pulling on the flight suit that still had her old squadron patches. Her hands were steady, her breathing was controlled, and her mind was already 3 steps ahead, running through weapons employment sequences and energy management calculations. Lieutenant Commander Jake Dalton had spent the morning mocking the analyst from headquarters. In approximately 8 minutes, he was going to discover exactly who that analyst really was. And the lesson was going to be delivered at Mach 1.5 with weapons hot. Sarah's boots hit the flight deck at a dead run. The Super Hornet sat on the catapult, engines already spooling up, deck crew moving with organized urgency. The crew chief saw her coming and did a double take. This wasn't the scheduled pilot, and the woman sprinting toward his aircraft definitely wasn't on any flight roster he'd seen. "Ma'am, I don't have authorization for emergency scramble." Sarah cut him off, already climbing the ladder. "Brief me while I strap in." The crew chief had 20 years on carriers. He knew when to ask questions and when to just make things happen. "Aircraft is hot, full fuel load, 4 AIM-120s and 2 AIM-9X. All systems green." Sarah dropped into the cockpit and 8 months of forced inactivity evaporated in an instant. Her hands moved through the startup sequence with muscle memory that went deeper than conscious thought. Harness. Click, 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 click. Helmet connected, oxygen flowing, weapon systems active, combat checks complete, she called. Ready for launch. The canopy came down, the world outside became muted, and for the first time in 8 months, Sarah Moore felt like herself again. The launch officer appeared, running through final signals. Sarah confirmed each one, then pushed both throttles to full military power. The Super Hornet shook with restrained violence, 44,000 pounds of thrust trying to push forward against the catapult holdback. Final check. Sarah brought her right hand up in a sharp salute. "I'm ready. I trust the machinery. Send me." The launch officer touched the deck. The catapult fired, 0 to 165 miles per hour in under 2 seconds. The crushing acceleration, the deck edge disappearing, that terrible moment of freefall before the wings caught air. And then she was flying, climbing away from the carrier, and everything that had been wrong for 8 months suddenly became right again. "Strike, Reaper is airborne," she transmitted, using her old call sign without thinking. "Request vectors to training package and hostile contacts." The response came from Commander Martinez, his voice tight. "Reaper, strike. You are not authorized for strike. 4 American pilots are about to be ambushed by 5 stealth fighters. I'm the only asset close enough to help. Give me the vectors or explain to their families why you didn't." Silence. Then a different voice, the Hawkeye controller. "Reaper, Hawkeye, training package is bearing 325, range 58 miles, Angels 20. Hostiles are bearing 318, range 80 miles, Angels 25. They're in attack formation and will reach weapons range in 4 minutes." Sarah banked hard left, climbing, throttles in full afterburner. The Super Hornet leapt forward, Mach meter climbing steadily. "Hawkeye, Reaper, rules of engagement. Reaper, you are weapons free on hostile contacts. They've activated fire control radar on our training package. Hostile intent confirmed," which meant the J-20s weren't just probing or intercepting. They were preparing to shoot. "Hawkeye, patch me through to the training package. You're live on their frequency." Sarah keyed her mic, her voice carrying the absolute authority of someone who'd done this before and knew exactly what needed to happen. "Viper, Torch, this is Reaper. Cease training exercise immediately. You have 5 hostile stealth fighters inbound from your 11 and 1 o'clock, range 40 miles. They have radar locks on your aircraft. This is not a drill. Execute defensive split now." 2 seconds of silence. Then Viper's voice, confused and irritated. "Unknown caller, this is a closed training frequency. Lieutenant Commander, this is Captain Moore. And in 3 minutes you're going to be dead if you don't listen. Break right immediately. Torch, break left. Get separation. Go defensive. Do it now. Radar warning." Jester's voice suddenly cut through. "Multiple locks. Someone's painting me. That would be the 5 J-20s about to kill you. Sarah said, her aircraft screaming through 25,000 feet. Viper, Torch, execute the brake now. I'm 40 miles out and closing fast. This time Viper didn't argue. Sarah heard his engine note change as he executed a hard defensive brake. Whatever questions he had, his training was taking over. Reaper, who the hell are you? Torch demanded, her aircraft braking the opposite direction. I'm the person saving your life. Hawkeye, Reaper, give me a picture. Reaper, hostiles are splitting. 3 contacts continuing toward Viper and Jester. 2 contacts breaking north toward Torch and Snake. They're adapting to the defensive split. Professional, coordinated, aggressive. Whoever was leading those J-20s knew their business. Sarah checked her tactical display, running calculations at combat speed. Hawkeye, range to northern group. 28 miles and closing. They've locked you up, Reaper. They know you're there. Good. That meant they'd shifted attention from the training package to her. Sarah selected her first AIM 120 AMRAAM, designated the lead hostile in the northern group. The missile seeker head locked with a solid tone. Fox 3. The AMRAAM dropped from her wing and ignited, accelerating to Mach 4 as it streaked toward its target. Sarah immediately selected her second missile, locked the second hostile, fired. Fox 3, second target. Reaper, Hawkeye, both hostiles are defending. First one just went ballistic. Splash, confirm splash on first contact. Second hostile is splash, 2 kills, Reaper. Sarah was already turning hard toward the remaining 3 J-20s. Viper, Torch, get your radars active. Paint those 3 remaining bandits. When I call Fox 3, you take your shots. Copy, Reaper. This is Viper. How are you doing this? Who? Questions later, killing now. Do you copy? Copy. Standing by. Sarah's radar had the 3 remaining hostiles. They'd broken off from the training package and were turning toward her. 3 stealth fighters who'd just watched their wingman die and wanted revenge. She selected her third AMRAAM, locked the lead aircraft. Her radar warning receivers screamed. One of the J-20s had fired at her. Sarah's mind split into parallel tracks: offense, defense, overall tactical picture. The incoming missile was a Place 15, long range, fully capable of killing her. She could go defensive, focus on survival, give up the initiative. Or she could do what she'd done 14 times before in similar situations, trust her aircraft and press the attack. She locked her third AMRAAM on the hostile who'd fired at her and pressed the trigger. Fox 3, then keyed the radio. Viper, Torch, fire on remaining 2 targets now. Fox 3, Viper. Fox 3, Torch. 4 American missiles in the air, 1 Chinese missile inbound on Sarah. The geometry was getting complicated. Sarah deployed chaff and flares, executed a high G barrel roll that crushed her into the seat. The G-suit squeezed her legs and torso, forcing blood to stay in her brain. The incoming missile went for the chaff, detonated 400 meters behind her. Sarah rolled level, checked her display. Viper's missile had splashed 1 hostile. Torch's was tracking the second. Break left, Snake, Sarah called suddenly. 5th hostile is on your 6. The last J-20, the one everyone had lost track of, had used the chaos to get behind Snake's aircraft. Sarah could see it on her display, could see the geometry developing, could see exactly how this would end if she didn't act. She selected her last AMRAAM, but Snake and the hostile were too close. She couldn't fire without risking friendly fire. That left her 2 sidewinders in a problem that required getting much closer. Sarah shoved her throttles full forward and turned hard toward the engagement, pulling G's that made her vision tunnel. The Super Hornet protested but held together. She closed the distance at supersonic speed. Snake, on my call, brake left as hard as you can. Trust me, I can't see. 3, 2, 1, brake now. Snake's aircraft snapped into a hard left turn. The J-20 followed, his pilot focused on getting the kill, not seeing Sarah closing from above and behind. Fatal mistake. In air combat, the most dangerous threats are the ones you're not watching. Sarah selected her sidewinder, got the heat seeker's growling tone as it locked the J-20's engines, and fired from less than 3 miles. Fox 2. The sidewinder leapt off her rail and tracked the J-20's hot exhaust. The hostile pilot realized his mistake 1 second too late. Sarah saw him try to maneuver, saw flares deploy, but the sidewinder detonated, shredding the J-20's tail section. Splash 5, Hawkeye called. Reaper, confirm 5 hostiles splashed. Battle space is clear. 5 kills in less than 12 minutes. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. All aircraft, this is Reaper. Form up on me for return to carrier. Viper, your flight lead of your section. Torch, your lead of yours. Check fuel states and follow my lead home. Reaper, Viper, who are you? I'm your CAG's worst nightmare and your life insurance policy, Lieutenant Commander. Now let's get everyone home safely. We'll sort out the rest on deck. The 5 aircraft formed up and turned back toward the carrier. As the adrenaline faded, Sarah felt the familiar post-combat exhaustion settling in. But underneath it was something else. Satisfaction maybe, or vindication. The doctors had been wrong. The medical board had been wrong. And now everyone would know it, because you couldn't hide 14, now 19, air-to-air kills behind wire-rimmed glasses and a clipboard. The carrier appeared on the horizon. Sarah began her descent, her mind already shifting to the next challenge, explaining to a carrier air group commander how a supposedly grounded analyst had just conducted an unauthorized combat mission that resulted in 5 enemy fighters destroyed. Just another day in the life of Captain Sarah, Reaper, more. Except now everyone would know exactly who she really was. The landing was perfect. Sarah trapped the 3-wire exactly where she should. The violent deceleration was familiar and almost comforting after 8 months away. She taxied clear and shut down the engines, and through her canopy she could see the crowd gathering on the deck. This was going to be interesting. Commander Martinez was first up the ladder as the canopy opened. His face showed relief mixed with something that might have been anger or respect or both. Captain Moore, that was either brilliant or insane. It was necessary, sir. Sarah started unbuckling. 5 hostiles splashed, 0 friendly casualties. That's called mission success where I come from. Where you come from is apparently classified well above my pay grade. He lowered his voice. Sarah, the CAG wants to see you immediately. And there's already a call from CINCPAC wanting to know what the hell just happened. I imagine they do. Sarah pulled off her helmet, her hair falling loose from where it had been tucked. Tell the CAG I'll be there in 10 minutes. I need to debrief these pilots first. That's not, Commander, those 4 pilots just experienced their first real combat. They need immediate tactical debrief while everything's fresh. The political conversations can wait 10 minutes. Before Martinez could argue, Lieutenant Commander, Viper, Dalton appeared at the base of the ladder. His face was pale, his flight suit dark with sweat, and his eyes showed the 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd just realized how close he'd come to dying. Captain Moore, he said quietly. He struggled with the words. Ma'am, I'm sorry for this morning, for the attitude, for, save it, Viper. Sarah climbed down the ladder. You didn't know. You weren't supposed to know. But now that you do know, we need to talk about what happened up there and what you learned from it. Torch and the other pilots had clustered nearby, all of them showing various stages of combat shock. Sarah had seen it before. The adrenaline crash, the shaking hands, the sudden awareness of mortality. First lesson, Sarah said, her voice carrying to all of them. Real combat is nothing like training. The second those radar warnings went off, you all froze for critical seconds. That's normal for first contact, but normal gets you killed. From now on, you train with the mindset that every exercise could become real without warning. How did you? Snake started, then stopped. Ma'am, that flying, the way you managed the whole engagement while defending yourself, that's not normal. It's what happens when you have 4 years of combat experience instead of 4 years of peacetime training. Sarah looked at each of them. I've been where you were today, multiple times, and I survived because I learned that hesitation kills people. You all did well once you got over the initial shock, but we're going to work on reducing that shock time to 0. Viper asked, you think the Navy's going to let you go back to carrying a clipboard after this? I just demonstrated exactly why analysts shouldn't be analysts if they have capabilities that are more useful elsewhere. Sarah glanced toward the island superstructure where she knew important people were waiting. But first, I have to go explain to several admirals why I violated numerous regulations and engaged enemy aircraft without proper authorization. You saved our lives, Torch said softly. That has to count for something. It counts for everything or nothing, depending on how the politics shake out. Sarah started toward the island. Go debrief with your squadron. Tell them exactly what happened. And when someone asks if you think I should be court-martialed, remember that you're only alive to answer because I was willing to break the rules. She left them standing on the deck, walked through corridors that seemed tighter than before, and arrived at the CAG's office knowing that the next hour would determine whether she'd resurrected her career or ended it permanently. The Carrier Air Group commander, Captain Wolfpack Wilson, was on the phone when she entered. He gestured for her to wait, finished his conversation, then fixed her with a look that could have stripped paint. "Captain Moore, in the last hour I've had calls from CINCPAC, from Navarre, from the Pentagon, and from our embassy in Beijing asking what the hell just happened and why a supposedly grounded analyst just shot down 5 Chinese stealth fighters. Sir, 4 American pilots were. I know why you did it, Captain. The question is how. Your medical records say you're permanently grounded due to inner ear damage from an ejection. Your service record says you washed out of flight training and went analyst track. But what I just watched on radar looked like someone with extensive combat experience conducting a complex engagement against superior numbers." Sarah met his gaze directly. "Sir, my actual service record is classified at a level you probably don't have access to. The medical grounding was precautionary, and as today proved, unnecessary. And the analyst cover was just that, a cover for work I did that officially never happened. So you're what? Some kind of secret squirrel pilot? They hid in my air wing. I'm someone with capabilities that were too valuable to waste but too classified to advertise, until today when the situation required those capabilities to save American lives." Wolfpack leaned back in his chair. 5 kills, Sarah. 5 confirmed in one engagement. Do you know how rare that is? There are maybe a dozen American pilots alive today with 5 or more air-to-air kills. And you just joined that club while everyone was watching. I had 14 before today, sir. But most of those happened in aircraft and airspace we don't officially acknowledge. The CAG was quiet for a long moment. The Navy has a problem now. We can't court-martial you. The optics of punishing someone who saved American lives would be catastrophic. But we also can't just ignore that you violated regulations. Or, Sarah said carefully, you could use this as an opportunity. Explain. Those 4 pilots you sent up today, they had no idea how to handle real combat. They froze. They hesitated. They made mistakes that would have gotten them killed if I hadn't been there. The Navy needs to fix that, and I know how. You want a training command. I want to build a program that produces pilots who can handle the kind of warfare we're actually going to face. Not peacetime exercises, real combat against near-peer adversaries who know what they're doing. Wolfpack studied her. That would require you to be medically cleared. Then clear me. Run whatever tests you want. I'll pass all of them, because there's nothing wrong with me that would prevent me from doing my job." The phone rang. Wolfpack answered, listened, then looked at Sarah with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Understood, sir. I'll bring her immediately." He hung up. "That was the Admiral. He wants to see you in person. And Captain, whatever you're going to say, make it good, because you've got about 15 minutes to convince him that you're an asset worth keeping instead of a liability that needs to be quietly transferred to a desk in Omaha." Sarah stood. "Sir, I've been lying to people about who I am for 8 months. The truth is a lot more convincing." She left the office and headed toward her meeting with the Admiral, her mind already organizing arguments and evidence. The career she'd thought was over had just been resurrected by 12 minutes of combat. Now she had to prove that those 12 minutes weren't a fluke. They were a preview of what she could teach others to do. The most dangerous pilots were the ones you never saw coming, and Sarah Moore had just announced her presence to the entire Pacific Fleet. 4 months later, the Advanced Combat Training Program held its first class aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt. 16 pilots, selected not for their political connections but for their aptitude and willingness to be pushed beyond normal limits. Lieutenant Commander Jake Viper Dalton stood in the back of the briefing room, watching Captain Sarah Moore outline a tactical scenario that made half the students look nervous. He'd been one of her first recruits, probably because she'd wanted to prove to him personally that the analyst he'd mocked was actually the best teacher he'd ever have. 3 of you will be dead in the first 30 seconds of this engagement, Sarah was saying, her voice carrying the absolute certainty of someone who'd seen it happen. The question is, which 3? And what will the survivors do differently that keeps them alive? Lieutenant Cassidy, Torch, Ryan leaned toward Viper. She's terrifying. Yeah, Viper agreed, but she's the reason we're alive. And everything she's teaching us, it works. I've learned more in 4 months than in my previous 6 years combined. They watched Sarah demonstrate a defensive maneuver on the tactical display, her hands moving through 3-dimensional space, her explanations filled with details that could only come from actual experience. The students were riveted, that particular mix of fear and respect that characterized everyone who trained under the woman who downed 5 enemy jets in 12 minutes. "You think she's happy?" Torch asked quietly. "Teaching instead of flying combat? I think she's exactly where she needs to be," Viper said. "Passing on everything she knows, making sure the next generation is ready for what's coming." On the flight deck, Sarah finished her brief and caught Viper's eye through the window. She nodded slightly. Acknowledgement, respect, the understanding between people who'd shared something that couldn't be explained to anyone who wasn't there. Then she turned back to her students and said something that made them all lean forward, paying absolute attention. Because when Captain Sarah, Reaper, Moore talked about air combat, people listened. And the pilots she trained would carry those lessons into cockpits where they'd face enemies who were fast, skilled, and absolutely committed to killing them. But they'd also carry the knowledge that they'd been taught by someone who'd faced those same enemies and made it look easy, even though it never was.